Hey everyone, welcome back to another Thursday night at home with Olympus. We've got a really special event tonight. We are working with some of our community photographers, but we also have one of my favorite coworkers joining us tonight to share her photography and what she does as well. And her name is Amanda. Amanda, welcome on. Tell us a little bit about what you do at Olympus.
Thanks. I'm really excited to join you tonight. So what I do at Olympus is I am the manager of social media and content in the US, and I work to develop all the content that you see on our social channels and on our Learn Center, and work really closely with our social colleagues in the UK and Australia and other countries to kind of just build as big of an Olympus community as possible.
That's super awesome. In case you guys don't know, Amanda is often working in the shadows, helping on these Home with Olympus lives every Thursday night. And we would not be able to give this awesome event to you without her help. So thank you, Amanda.
No,
It's super great.
I'm just glad to join. And, this is the first one of these where we're bringing non-Olympus ambassadors in. So I think it's a really great and hopefully first of many occurrences where we talk to people who are everyday Olympus photographers and the types of people who we will share their photos on our social media and work with them to create content for the Learn Center and just be out in the world shooting with Olympus.
That's awesome. We have people from like everywhere tonight. This is crazy. I've seen Spain, I've seen Russia, Germany, Florida. Sounds nice and warm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Australia. So we should probably get rolling. Amanda, do you want to go first and share some of your recent photography and what you've been up to?
Sure. So, part of what we're doing tonight is talking to people about what they've been shooting recently. And we thought that it's only fair that we kind of talk about what we've been doing. And for me, the answer is I have not been shooting a lot recently. For me, I started doing macro during quarantine, and I'm really just kind of learning right now. I'm in full macro learning mode so that I'm ready and good to go as soon as the weather gets warm and all of the insects come out. So I've been re-editing a lot of old photos or new macro photos, and then going through some of my older photos. So if we take a look at some of the pictures, my background is actually in animal rescue photography. And I think if we move on to the next slide, you'll see some of that. So that's how I got started with photography. That's how I got started with shooting Olympus and just working with shelters to take pictures of these adoptable dogs. But during COVID, I haven't been able to do that. And under the tutelage of the amazing Chris McGinnis, I started doing macro photography. And then I kind of see them as being similar. If you look at this and you look at the next picture, I think that, animal rescue photography and macro photography, they're just portraits. They're animal portraits, whether you're trying to tell a story that's going to help a dog get adopted or just kind of tell a story about this little animal in this giant world. It's the same kind of thing. So I think that gave me the confidence to dive into macro because on the Olympus social channels, I see so many amazing macro photographers every day and kind of thought, I don't know if I can do that. But looking at it as it's just animal portraiture kind of gave me the confidence to do it. So if we're going to look at some of these photos, if you look at the dog photo again, he was this great dog who was sent into the shelter. And if you go forward, I have some behind the scenes shots of how I would do that. So I pull it up, my EM1 Mark II and my Emswico 45mm f1.2 Pro. This is my favorite portrait lens. I'm obsessed with it. I use continuous lighting so that the flash doesn't scare some of the dogs. And what I do is take Savage Universal, the Savage Seamless paper, and just create a clean backdrop. A lot of shelters, they might not be in the best areas. So if you create a clean backdrop, it just is something nice and you really pay attention to the dog. So what I'll do is there'll be helpers giving them treats and holding their leash, and then I will just remove the leash in Photoshop. My biggest tips if you want to kind of work with shelters or do this kind of work is always focus on the dog's eyes. The distance from their eyes to the nose is different than for humans. So if you accidentally focus on the nose, you lose that emotional connection to the dog's eyes. And then whoever's helping you, get their attention using toys, treats, or praise. Those are the three kind of incentives for dogs. And it helps to have them stand behind you so they make eye contact. And then just make sure that they're comfortable and not stressed. It should be a fun thing for them. And that's something that I love doing and hope I get to start doing it again. If we're looking at my macro shot, I use, again, the EM1 Mark II, but I use the 60 millimeter macro and this handy dandy homemade diffuser that, again, the great Chris McGinnis made for me. So
I have that too. It's sitting on my shelf. It's the best. Thank you, Chris McGinnis.
Yes. And you can take really anything and make a homemade diffuser and get started with macro photography. Adding a flash makes all of the difference in the world when you're shooting macro. This is actually one of my favorite shots from this summer. It's maybe not technically my best, but I feel like I made friends with this little damselfly as a baby, and it was just so curious and kept coming and flying right in front of me and kind of just looking up curiously at my camera. So I feel like I made a connection with him. I feel like his eyes look really curious. If you're looking to shoot damselflies, look near streams or a source of water. I know that Garant in the UK will hunt for damselflies, and I have a park 90 seconds away from my house that is full of damselflies, so I'm really lucky there. Stay still, let them get acclimated to your presence. They will flit about if they're scared or just surprised by something. So take some time, be still, kind of be one with nature is nice, blend in, and then they'll come to you. And don't be afraid to stack. This is 2 photos stacked together. If I'd gotten a better one of his I'm gonna say tail, but it's not really his tail, that would have been a better stack. But don't be afraid to try a few focus points. With bugs, I say the same thing that I say for dogs. Focus on the eyes, windows to the soul, tell a story. It's a portrait, but getting different focus points to stack is amazing for macro photography. So that's what I've been doing, going through old photos and going through recent macro photos and just trying to edit differently than I did the first time. That way, in a month, I will be ready to go and get all sorts of new bug shots.
I like what you said about being one with nature. Whenever I try to get the dragonflies at our local, we have a creek nearby too, and I'll sit down there, like I put my jacket down and I just hang out, because once they've landed once, they usually will land in the same place again,
Exactly.
which is actually super helpful, right? So you see them land and you go in, you get all settled, and I feel like a weirdo sometimes, like I'm sitting there waiting for dragonflies to come land around me like a creek wizard.
With dragonflies, I find that pro capture helps because they are so fast moving. Damselflies, I feel like I have a better handle on, but I don't think I've spent enough time with dragonflies to really be able to do it without pro capture.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just thinking. I love shooting the dragonflies in the spring. I've been waiting. They're not quite here yet, so I'm a little bummed. But I live in Northern California, so they just come in my house. Like when dragonfly season arrives, they're everywhere, and I can't escape them. I'm very thankful that I like them and they don't bother me. But so I always have a plethora of them to photograph somewhere in my house.
I'm so excited. I'm counting down the days. I tried winter macro. It didn't super work for me, but I'm just really excited to hear about what you've been shooting, because I've been seeing it from just you sharing it with me, and it's something that I really want to try. So I'm excited to hear you talk about what you've been shooting.
I never really talk about what I shoot. I'm always just helping everybody else share their stuff. But yeah, so lately, I go through phases with my photography. I was very into birds. I'm still into birds. I'm just not great at it yet. I'm trying. I want to be. And then I went through my macro. I go in and out of my macro phase. But right now, I've been just dying, waiting for astro season. Like I want to perfect my Milky Ways this year. That is a huge goal of mine. It's also why I'm super excited for our 2 Facebook Live Home with Olympuses for next month, because we've got 2 Thursday night lives with astro instruction, and it's going to be awesome. I'm very excited to learn from them.
It's April Astro.
Yeah, Astro April. Yeah, I'm very, very excited. I've been just waiting and shooting anything in the night sky I can. So lately I've been doing a lot of moon photography. Actually, I'm always doing moon photography. It's kind of gotten embarrassing. My kids, my neighbors call me because they know that I'm the lady that takes all the moon photos in the neighborhood. And they're like, Michaela, you got to get outside and look at the moon. So I'll go out and shoot it. But if we want to take a look at my recent moon photo.
Yeah.
Maybe. We'll see. There it is. Oh. This is probably one of my sharpest ones. I'm pretty proud of this one. I'm getting better. So I guess I should just probably jump straight into my tips. I don't know. My big thing is it's great. You know, I know I can shoot it handheld, but I've been hooked on, I get my tripod out. I really take my time with my moon photos. I kind of breathe slower, if you can believe that. And so I manually focus. And so for this shot, of course, I was using my EM1 Mark III. For this one, I was using the 300 millimeter and the 1.4 teleconverter. So I like to I try really hard to fill as much of the frame with the moon as possible with the lens that I have on hand. I've also been using the 100 to 400 a lot lately for my moon stuff. But
that's great for moon shots. I know a lot of people who have been using the 100 to 400.
So I used it with the 2x teleconverter when Jupiter was visible for a while, and I was blown away. Like I could see Saturn's. It was crazy. It was nuts. Incredible. I could get. Yeah. But so what I do is I like to manually focus. That's how I get those like fairly sharp shots. They're not all the sharpest, but I've been getting really good at sharp moon shots. And I actually use manual focus, and I use my tripod. Like I said, I take it really slow. But I like to use the manual focus assists that are in the camera. So I like to turn them both on, actually. I use magnify and peaking. And so magnify, when it's engaged and you're manually focusing, is going to do a super zoom into your image so you can really dial in your focus. And then if you engage peaking as well, it will start to kind of, I call it glitter. I know that's not the technical term, but it sparkles in red or yellow or black or white, but I leave it on red. And so my trick is to kind of pick a crater or like a very prominent part of the moon that I can see and use that as my nice little focusing box. And I'll start focusing, it magnifies it. I usually do about the 7x magnification. And as I nail that focus, the crater will start to glitter in red, and I know that I've got a nice sharp focus of the moon. And then I usually let my tripod sit for a second so I can get all its wiggles out and then shoot the image. But yeah, so that's kind of what I've been shooting. Like I said, I'm just really gearing up. I've got my calendar all marked for all the dark skies in Milky Way season, so I'm ready. I got my car ready for car camping. I just can't wait to shoot some more night sky stuff.
Well, next month there is a super pink moon on the 26th, so I think you'll be ready for that. We'll be sharing some moon photo tips on our social pages to prep people for the super pink moon. So stay tuned for that. And I think it's funny that, you know, I talked about shooting macro, which is, you know, very small to the ground. You talked about the moon, which is very large and up in the sky. And everyone we're going to be speaking to today is shooting something in between there. Yeah, I think that's a good way to segue into our first guest.
Oh yeah,
we should really excited.
We should bring Natalie on. I think she's up first, right?
Hi, Natalie. Natalie was one of our participants in the Break Free program, and that is how we got to know her. And we're really glad that we did, because she's fantastic. And I'm definitely inspired by her photos when I see them on Instagram. So thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Michaela. I appreciate it so much. The Break Free program was to be a part of, and And I think one of the most fun parts was just the kind of lasting friendships that have come up between me and the other participants. So it's really, really cool to have contact with all these young talents.
And you got to work with Peter Baumgarten, who is someone who inspires me pretty much daily. So I think that was a really good partnership.
Oh man, he is an incredible human being. I am super excited to see his talk at the end of April.
Yeah,
the 22nd. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, everything that I'm going to show today pretty much came from his instruction and his help. I mean, I suppose that's my artistic spin on his lessons, but you know, I went out trying to shoot astro, you know, prior to talking to him, and you know, just nothing worked. And he gave me the settings, and I went out and I was like, oh look, but there's the Milky Way. Look what I did.
I love that. I'm really excited to get your tips on astro. We shared one of your astro landscapes on Instagram today, and I thought it was stunning. So again, this is something that I'm looking to learn how to do. So I am ready to learn and see what you've been shooting.
Nice. Yeah, so I definitely focus on landscape, and I like to make sure that my foreground is something of interest as well. Just so these two are, as I said earlier, you know, or may have said earlier, I guess maybe I didn't, but I live in Colorado, so there's pretty much endless amazing landscapes to come to go photograph. But you know, going out at night puts a unique spin on some of these places. So the one with the red rocks there, that's a pretty famous place near Colorado Springs called Garden of the Gods. So it's near Colorado Springs. It gets a lot of off-cast light from downtown Colorado Springs at night. And so the rocks are really just lit basically by city lights at night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was an interesting shoot to try and get the foreground not blown out, actually, because of how bright it was, but to still be able to see some of those stars. And Orion is my favorite constellation, so you know, I was really excited that it lined up right between the two, the way that worked out. But my favorite, really still my favorite thing to do is to do the star trails. So that's kind of the one that I'm going to be more talking and focusing about, because they're just so fun. They're very striking. They're quite simple, actually. So especially with Olympus camera, you get the settings and you can have something this fabulous. So you know, that those aren't particularly like extra talent of mine, just found a good spot that was dark at night and set the camera up and let it do its thing. So, but they, you know, they just look so amazing. And you know, Peter has looked at both of these, and what he mentioned about this was, he said, isn't it so cool how you got the North Star like lined up perfectly between those pine trees? And I said, oh yeah, mm-hmm.
I do.
Totally planned that.
Absolutely. I didn't notice that. Oh, wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I did not actually plan that. I can't take credit.
That's always my big tip to everybody. Find the North Star. You're going to get your best photos if you go in the direction of the North Star.
Yeah. It was a good, this again was a moonlit night. So getting that shot right where the rock walls and the snow were not just totally whited out. But the live comp is the setting I use for that. And that helps immensely. So I think my settings and tips are on the next slide. Yeah. So the night that I went out to this canyon, which is just about 45 minutes north of where I live, it was actually a full moon night. And so I had to do quite a bit of trial and error. The full moon really throws things off because you can see the first picture at the bottom that you can see all of. That was the first shot I took. and it was just far too bright. I mean, it looks like it's daylight basically. So, and then also you can see my car. So, whoops. So I had to move things around a bit, and I had to dial down the settings. So then the next one up is a good bit darker, but it also cut out some of the stars. So finding that balance in that exposure length was the key. Before I set up the camera to do the live comp, I wanted a good shot where I had good definition in the stars, but I wasn't overblown on the canyon walls. So obviously I played around quite a bit. I even went out in front of the camera. You can see me there. And like I said, that shadow, that's just from the moon. So it's so crazy. It was so bright out that night.
Wow. I'm really impressed that you got as good of star trails as you got with that much moon.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I would expect, it would be a lot darker for how many stars you were actually able to pull out of the sky. Good job.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And I know most pros would say not to go out on a full moon night. And so part of this was my not really being a pro and just like, no, let's go see what happens. And sometimes that works. So
I did that when I first got into astrophotography and realizing what live composite was and that I could do. Mm-hmm. So I got super into star trails years ago, and then I read how to do it, and I was like, that is really a lot of math and complexity. I'm not going to do that. And then when I learned about live composite, I was the same. I was like, I'm going to go out and I'm just going to get star trails, and it's going to be amazing. And it's like a full moon night and the city's in the background, and I'm like, why isn't this working? So learning all those things, like, going out and photographing in a new moon situation when the sky is as dark as it possibly can be is going to give you brighter stars. So you'll get really prominent star trails. But I'm impressed. That's awesome.
Well, this is a I am a super lucky individual in that, as I said, this is about 45 minutes north of my house, and it's not registered on the IDA dark sky, but it should be. There's just zero light out there. So I actually want to go back there some night on a new moon night and see what I can get, because I'm sure it's going to be absolutely stunning.
Just make sure you have your headlamp, right?
Yes.
Don't forget your headlamp.
Yes. Well, yeah, there's definitely some stories behind that.
And I'm assuming the warm mittens too, since that was that made it on the slide. I figure that must be pretty important for you in Colorado.
Yeah. Absolutely. It gets super cold at night around here, especially at elevation. So that night, I think it was 0. I think we were looking at 0 degrees. And so while the camera, once I got the shot set up and got the camera doing its thing for the star trails, I had a sleeping bag, and I couldn't open the car door because I didn't want the extra light, but I basically just huddled under a sleeping bag for an hour to let the camera do its thing. So warm mittens for sure.
So
while you're setting up.
Oh, sorry.
That's I was going to say,
I know you have Star Night Sky apps on your list of tips.
Yes.
What apps do you find most helpful when you're looking and scouting for new locations?
I use well, there's 2, and they're fairly similar. So one is called TPE, or the photographer's epipheris. I cannot say the word. I'm sorry, but and the other one is called Photo Pills, PILLES or PILLS rather. And they're both, as far as I have kind of experimented with, they're both quite similar. They will show you all the basic landmarks of the day, like when exactly is sunset, when is golden hour, when is blue hour, when does the moon rise, when does it set, and this time of year, it also does the core of the galaxy and when that rises, and where it'll be, what angle it'll be at, and it even either one of them kind of has a AR setting where you can kind of turn it on and move your phone around in the setting, and it'll show you where the sun is and where the sun will be at a certain time in the sky, or where the galaxy core will be. And so that's super helpful, because then, like, oh, well, at this time of year, the galaxy core doesn't rise until 3 a.m. or so. So don't bother going out at midnight. You're not going to see it.
Oh yeah, I talk about that all the time in our little Astro Home with Olympus sessions. I'm like, please plan ahead.
Yeah.
Don't just go outside in the dark, because you won't get it. And I love photo pills for that. Even just day-to-day photography, like knowing exactly when you got your golden hour and blue hour, you want to go take some nice portraits.
Right.
There you go. Such an awesome app.
I use it almost literally every day. And then the other app I do use is called Clear Outside, and it does really focused weather. So you can look and see how much cloud cover there will be in your area at any time. And again, so, on a super overcast night, I'm not going to want to get up at 3 a.m. if I'm really not going to see anything. So that's also super helpful. So those are the two that I rely on the most: the weather, the Clear Outside, and then the photo pills. And so use those two, and then make sure you scout during the day so that you know where you're going, because it looks totally different at night and without your headlamp. You may not get the shot you meant to get, or the foreground may just not look like you want it to. So
I use when I'm out. I'm lucky, like Natalie. I live in a not rural area, but I live very close to a rural area. So when I'm out driving and I scout things during the day that I'm like, oh, this might be nice, I'll literally drop a pin on my map so I can direct myself right back to it at night when it's dark, so I don't get lost.
Yeah.
Or if I find something really cool for the foreground, like old barns, or like there's this 2 towns over, this really cool old funky church that's like falling into the ground. And one of these days it's all going to work out and I'm going to get that shot. Hasn't worked yet, but
I love that. I'm not quite as lucky. I don't live in a very dark sky area. I think the best one is maybe an hour and a half away from me. So I think that I have photo pills on my phone, and with live comp, I think that I might try and do something one weekend this year for Milky Way season. Yeah. I think I'm ready. When I first started with Olympus and getting used to the camera, I'd always seen star trails, and I knew that it would take people hours to do it in Photoshop. And then the first time I played around with live composite, it was in the office, and someone had little like light sticks, and I got to see it happen, and it clicked. So I'm like, okay, I can actually do this.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's one of my favorite camera settings to use, and it's really easy to set up. So just get out there and explore. It's exciting.
I love that. Do you have anything planned for the next few weeks that you want to shoot?
Oh, well, actually, this weekend I'm heading to Utah, which is only a few hours drive. And according to my app, it should be clear skies at night. So
that's all in the planning.
Yes, I should have some great rock formations and stars coming up on my Instagram page in the next week or so. So
I do see somebody, it's not a question, it's a comment, but a light pollution map is also very helpful.
Oh, and yeah.
I would definitely agree. There's a couple. Do you use a specific website? I have a couple of my favorites, but I'll let you share yours. I guess you live in the dark sky zone, so you don't really need it.
I do. But the other app that I was talking about, the TPE Photo Epiphemus, that actually, if you set it for night settings, it will show light pollution as different colors on the map. And so you look for somewhere that's like a dark purple or is just not marked at all. And typically that'll be a dark sky place. So
nice.
That's what I use.
I like it. I think it's called darksitefinder.com, and that's how I was able to figure out that I'm like in a light pollution zone, but everything around me is nice and dark. And I was like, oh, that makes it very convenient. I can never move now because I'm in a very convenient night sky photography zone.
Yes.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, Natalie, I know that you have very important work to get back to today. So is there anything else you want to share with us before you jump off and we introduce our next guest?
I can't think of anything, and I feel like I talked a lot. So thank you for letting me babble on. I appreciate it.
No, we love it.
It was really fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank
for
you.
joining us. And thank you. I know that you came from a hospital and you're going back to a hospital. So just thank you for all of the work that you've been doing for the past year. You are inspiring in more than one way.
Oh, you guys
we love our frontline workers.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
I love it. I wish that I could get out now and shoot some astro.
Yeah, I keep waiting. I was gonna go. We had a new moon. It was a nice dark sky last weekend. No, the 13th, and I got all excited. And then we had horrible clouds, and I was so frustrated because I was like, well, I had psyched myself up to freeze my butt off all night and get my big jacket, and then, clouds. What can you do? Hey.
She didn't talk about it today, but something that Natalie is great at is using focus stacking in her landscapes. I know that's something that Peter talks a lot about, and that's something that she's done to great effect. There are some pictures I can think of so clearly with a leaf on some rocks in the foreground, and I know she did a focus stack on that, and that I think is probably a good way to bring in our next guest talking about focus stacking.
Yes.
I think she's here.
Hi.
Hi, Nicole.
Yay. Hi, Nicole.
How are you?
We're doing pretty well. We get to talk about photography all night. I feel like this is a really fun Thursday.
Absolutely.
So, Nicole, first and foremost, thank you so much for being on here and sharing your photography with us tonight. I already know what it is, and it's really awesome, guys.
Thank you.
It's super cool, and I've never been able to do this, and I'm jealous of how amazing it is. But first, can we talk a little bit about you? Where you're from, what you like to photograph, what have you been doing lately? What have you been shooting lately?
Absolutely. So on my first slide, it shows a little bit, because I kind of photograph everything. I don't really have a specific genre. I would say I'm a nature photographer, but I also incorporate urban. I do portraits. So I kind of, I'm an all-around photographer. I just love shooting everything. So right now I've been focusing on getting into macro because it's going to be macro season. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be doing my first attempts at astro. So I'm very excited for that. But over the winter, I was really trying to hone in my macro skills so that I could be ready for flowers and things like that. And then I fell in love with doing snowflake macros. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And I remember being really, really little, and we were talking about snowflakes in elementary school, and they had this giant book of just pictures of snowflakes. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And now I'm taking the same types of pictures. So that's pretty cool.
These are so good. I love them.
The detail. I tried this quite a few times myself this year and did not succeed. I don't think once I got anything that was a fraction as detailed as this.
Thank you so much.
I know one of your tips, and if I had known one of your tips back when I was doing it, it would have saved my photos, but I didn't know, and I know for next year.
Yes, absolutely. So snowflakes, I did so much research in how to do snowflake macro before I got my macro lens. And I actually use my EM1 Mark III, and then I use the little 30 millimeter macro lens. And this lens comes everywhere with me because it's so little. So I can just pop it in my purse, and I usually have my 12 to 100 millimeter on my camera. And then I just carry my macro around with me just in case. I'm always ready. But for my tips for the macro snowflakes is I use for my material, you can use any material that you want. But for my main material, I use felt because I feel like having the texture in the background kind of gives an offset to like the cold snowflake, and then you have like this cozy little sweater behind it. So you can really use any type of material you want, play around with it, mix it up, get all the different textures. But my main tip is keep it in the freezer all the time, so it's really cold when you go outside, and it gives you a little bit more time to be able to capture the snowflake before it's gone.
Yeah.
In Maine, we're lucky because it's usually really cold out, but that's not the case everywhere. So definitely keep your material in the freezer, whatever you choose to use.
That's what I wish
then,
I had known.
yeah, I mean, I had read it on a photography blog that somebody was doing that. I'm like, that is genius. I'm just going to keep the felt in the freezer all the time now, so I'm always ready for when it snows.
It
And
makes so much
then,
sense. I feel like the snowflakes would hit my material and they would just melt far too
yeah,
quickly, and I would get this half melted snowflake. And that's so simple and genius that
it
I
just
think,
makes so much sense because you're bringing
yeah,
something that's like room temperature outside, and it's just warming them up. So having the material nice and cold when you bring it outside is really helpful.
for
And then I
sure.
usually set my piece of felt on top of our grill outside so that I'm not like bent over, hunching down and blocking out more light. So it's like nice and up in the light, because when you're doing the macro snowflakes, you have the dark background. You're getting so close to them that it really blocks out a lot of your light that you need to be bringing in. Or I use like a little bit of a higher ISO, around 640 usually, but I don't want to go above that because I don't want to introduce too much noise and lose the detail that I have.
Mm-hmm.
So I use my cell phone to add a little bit of extra lighting where I need it. And then I use the focus stacking mode in the camera, which you can find under the bracketing menu. And I ramp it all the way up so that it'll focus as much as possible. I know there's like a little scale that you can go through, and I go up to 10 and make sure that I'm getting as much in focus as possible so that I don't lose too much of that detail, and that I don't have to have too high of an ISO or cut out any additional light by closing down my aperture too much.
You know,
So
it's incredible. And you know, the felt adds such a great secondary detail to your photos because you see all the little wiry bits of felt and they complement the snowflake so well. But I think my favorite part about these photos is that you're using the 30mm macro. And I feel like the 60mm gets a lot of love, and that's kind of the macro lens we're known for. But I remember first seeing these and I was like, she's using the 30. That's so cool. I use the 60. I don't use the 30 that often, but it really made me want to try it because it is so small and it is something that you can just have on your camera really,
yeah,
really easily. So I love that you're giving the 30mm some love here because these are amazing.
I love the 30mm. I was actually playing around with it today too because it was like kind of a misty, hazy day. So we had raindrops everywhere. And I'm like, I know that Emily's going to be sharing her tips with that type of stuff tonight, but I'm just going to go and try it because I love my macro so much.
So I'm seeing a lot of questions about whether or not you are using a tripod when you do your bracketing or stacking. Are you hand holding it?
I completely handhold for my snowflake shots. The
Yeah.
snow is coming down. When I'm out there, the snow is coming down so quickly, and I really want to be able to work fast and get as many shots as possible, and also like move the material around and prop the snowflakes up. And the image stabilization in the Olympus cameras is amazing. I have never had an issue with hand holding any of my snowflake shots, and it really allows me that availability to be quick and, oh, that's a nice snowflake that just fell, and just move it over, versus a tripod and I have to try to move all the material around and focus it. So yeah.
That's crazy. You must not be like quite as shaky as me. I'm like very high strung as an individual, I think. I don't know. My handheld bracketing only, I mean, I've done it, especially with bugs, like in the bright sunlight, I can usually get away with it. But these are very impressed that you're hand holding and able to do the stacking in that way.
That's fantastic.
Very awesome.
Some of the stacks don't always work out, but I think like 8 out of 10 usually end up working for me handheld. So
somebody commented that I didn't need coffee, so thanks.
That's funny.
So for getting this level of focus, is 5.6 kind of like the lowest you would go? What's the different f-stop that you like to use for snowflake photography?
I like to keep it as open as possible. So I think like 5.6 would be the highest that I would go because the
Okay.
focus stacking really allows me to get as much in focus as possible without losing too much light. Because that's just the only issue that I run into sometimes is that I'm losing a lot of light because I'm so close to the snowflakes. Like sometimes I'm a finger length away. It's really close. So I have my additional light from my phone. But I don't really like using a flash either because I don't want to blow them out. Because with the snow, you have to be really careful to not blow out the
Yeah.
whites. So I just add a little bit of additional lighting and I try to keep as much light coming into the camera as possible without having too high of an ISO. You have to really think of the exposure triangle when you're out there doing these.
Mm-hmm.
In macro
when you're cold.
entirely. Yeah. Yeah, it's also cold. But yeah, for macro photography entirely, like I always am constantly reminding people, I'm like, you really need to get familiar with your exposure triangle. It's going to help you maximize your shots if you understand every setting and what they do. And this is so impressive.
Thank you.
You know, I take pictures of really slow moving macro items like flowers and like grasshoppers. They're very chill. I don't know. This is high stress for me. I don't know if I could handle this.
It's really fun.
I love it. I think it's just so impressive. The little guys are my favorite. The ones that look like flowers, I think, are my favorite.
It looks like a little field of flowers. I was so excited when I got that. I was like, yes. Like it reminds me of like that 70s like floral print.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm glad that I've learned from you and now I'm slightly more prepared for winter next year.
Yes. I'm excited to see what you do. You come up with.
It is very different doing this kind of like winter snow-based macro when you're used to doing bugs, because again, like you were saying, the flash, the exposure triangle, it's going to be really different when you're shooting around all this bright snow versus, you know, if you're shooting lots of green with trees or grass and branches. It's a different world and you have to adapt your macro photography for it.
Absolutely. Yep. I noticed that today because I automatically like just put my ISO up when I went outside to take pictures with macro today. I'm like, oh, I always just like bump it up. I'm like, whoa, that's way too bright. Like, gotta bring it back a little bit.
I love that.
Well, what are you looking forward to shooting as we go into spring? I guess April's literally like a week away now. What are your big plans to shoot?
So my neighbor is actually a bee farm, so I'm going to do some beehive macro, and I'm really excited. Wow. So that's coming up in April, and then also in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be doing Milky Way and astrophotography for the first time and try to get those star trails. So I'm really excited that I just heard all of Natalie's really good tips. So.
And what lens are you going to be using for your star trails?
So I got the fisheye lens, the
8mm
fisheye. I'm really excited about that because that'll give me a little bit longer time to have the exposure go. So,
this is so fun for Astro.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
I love that.
You can join us on our Facebook Live so you can learn from all of our pros like me. I'm so excited to like learn next month. Poor Amanda, she's heard me talk about this all month long. I'm so excited for Astro April.
Yeah,
like I want to learn all the tips. I'm so prepared. Come Milky Way season, I'm going to be the best darn Milky Way photographer out there. Thank goodness we have these live sessions.
Right. So many good tips.
Yeah.
Not sure. Do we have any other questions that we want to bring up? I know I've been seeing a lot of cool comments across Facebook and YouTube. I think a lot of the questions were about, are you hand holding for focus stacking?
We're all very impressed. Yes. Stack and hand hold.
Yes.
It's hard when they melt so quickly. So
it is. Yeah.
Give you lots
you have to move quick.
For that. Cool.
Well,
thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're really excited and I can't wait to see the bees.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. And thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, we're super glad that you could come spend your evening with us and be really careful. Wear one of those bee suits. Okay.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Protect yourself. All right. Awesome. So who do we have up next? Emily, right? Is she joining us next? Awesome.
Hey guys. I'm super excited to be with you because, usually I'm the one like asking questions, and I'm following religiously every live session that you guys do here in the US and also in the UK. So that's a change.
Yeah, you're on the other side of the monitor now.
I
Welcome.
know.
understand that. It's so weird to be on the other side when we're used to being in the comments, replying to people, being on camera. It's totally different.
Exactly. I was, listening to Natalie and Nicole, and I was thinking, oh my God, that's so amazing. And I'm like, oh, I want to ask them questions. So I can't do that now. I will make sure I connect with them later on because that's pretty cool work.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk to you. You're great. You're one of our Break Free program participants. Yes. Before we dig in, I'd love to throw this one comment up. I am loving all of the great tips. Never thought I'd look forward to winter, but photographing snowflakes, yes. I saw that and that just made me so happy. We're happy that we're able to get you thinking about next year. Hopefully when everything is going to be different with what you can go out and photograph.
Yeah.
Exactly. Planning is key.
Yes. It's and all in the planning.
A lot.
And a little bit of luck.
Yes.
I feel like you are a master at planning. You spent, the past 6 months planning and getting to know this amazing little colony of beavers and knowing when they would be out eating or when they would be building their dams. And you developed such a really cool relationship with your wildlife subjects. I know that's not what you're talking about today, but I think that it's really cool to be able to do both.
Yeah, so it's so funny because when I saw the possibility to be part of the Break Free program, I was thinking, what can I do? I want to do macro, but then I had just moved actually from a rental to the capital of New Hampshire. And when I say capital of New Hampshire, you have to think small. It's still like forest all around, wildlife. And I discovered this pond 20 minutes walking distance from me. And I thought, oh, okay, there must be some wildlife around. And then I just so hooked to going there every day and watching this family of beavers. They are the cutest. I mean, I'm obviously not very partial because I feel like they're my family. I care for them a lot. And they have all their personalities. So there is I've counted 5 of them. There is the patriarchal, and he's like it's enormous beaver. You can see it from a mile away. And he's the most mellow beaver. I would stand on one side of the pond, minding my own business, taking my distance, and he would get a branch and just crawl back to me and just eat right in front of me.
I love that. I'm seeing a comment right now that says, how did you get the drops on the spiral? Which I think we should probably show off some of your photos because that's what you're going to be talking about today.
Yes, refraction. So I really got hooked to photography with macro and with refraction. I have to say that I'm from France, from Burgundy, the birthplace of photography. And I feel terrible because actually I never really was into photography when I was in France. So I had to come here in the US and get my Olympus cameras actually a year and a half ago to really get into photography. So thank you so much for making those amazing cameras for us. What I do I have different techniques with the drops. And this is actually what you're seeing inside this one is a photo I took for the Break Free program of one of the bee on the pond. And I thought that would be cool to kind of integrate the bee into one of the droplets. So I wanted to try it out.
Were you visiting Nicole's neighbor?
That's when I heard that, I'm like, oh, Nicole, we need to talk because she lives not very far from me. So yes, I'll be bothering her to go and find bees. There's so much fun to photograph as well. And
I can just go to the screen. I just want to get as close as possible because there's so much detail of the bee in those water drops. It's insane.
Yes, and
Amazing.
thanks to focus stacking, like Nicole, that's what I've been using on that type of photography to get the drops. And the drops, you want to make sure that you have an even number. That's always more pleasing. But we can maybe switch to some of the tips
Yeah.
on the next slide. So my tip number one is get a syringe, insulin syringe. That is what you will need the most for a refraction. So that type of photography is called refraction, where you have the light passing from one medium into another medium, and that will basically affect the direction of the light. So here the B is turned upside down. And to put the droplets, you just need to have one of those, and it's just way, way easier, because I've tried everything. I've tried a blade of grass. That was how I started. I've tried the eyedropper, but there is nothing like a syringe. I know some photographers who also recommend adding something to the water. I don't.
I've used vegetable glycerin, not for refraction, but for dewdrops. I've used the vegetable glycerin before because it works really well. And you don't have to go quite to a syringe, but I am so blown away by that. That's exactly how you create those water drops.
Yes. So just, I have like a couple of flowers that, I buy, and I'm lucky they kind of flourish every 6 months. So I get to do it all over again. And you just take, a petal of flower or anything that's not too big. And then you have to be very gentle. So you probably will have to go on coffee detox for a week before you do that.
I like that the entire world is very concerned about my coffee intake now because of this live. Thanks, everyone.
Well, I don't drink coffee, so I'm going to try it tomorrow.
I'll let you know when I get out of coffee rehab.
When I'll see, clear water drops, I know you're all set.
Yeah.
But I think actually, Mishala, I got this tip with the adding to the mix from you, because I took one of your session, like the group session, that was really amazing. So I got some great tips from you. So thank you so much. But sometimes I complicate my life, and I only use water because it's ephemeral and it will disappear, and I can create something new. And I'm also extremely clumsy, so I'll probably bump my setting a few times, and hopefully I'll get something better the second, third, or fourth time. And go ahead.
So you said you're clumsy. I definitely can be that same way when I'm trying to do kind of indoor macro stuff. I saw that you have the remote cable talking about that. Do you ever use the iShare app on your phone for that?
No, I haven't done that for the macro, but that's excellent idea. I've done that for wildlife, and it's been really, really great. I've done that with the beavers to get some distance, but I've never done that with the macro, because I'm still pretty close to the camera. So what I used for the drop, the one with the B, is the 30 millimeter macro lens. And so the working distance, I think it's like 0.55 inches. It's so close, so I'm not too far.
Sounds about right,
yeah. So I can still, use the Olympus remote cable, and I'm fine. But it's true, it's a cable, so I might,
I love the love for the 30 millimeter macro tonight.
Yes, I love this. I got this not that long ago, because I've always done the drops with the 60, and that's my favorite. I absolutely adore the 60. But oh wow, this is really sweet lens as well. So I'm getting to use it a little bit more for the water drops. And one thing that's key too for the drops is you want to have your background has to be extremely bright. So with the iPad, so this is a photo I put on my iPad, and then you kind of have to figure out the right angle. And my iPad is already very bright. I put the brightest I could. So I don't need, obviously, any flashlight to do that. But on this second shot, if you want to go on the tips for the second photo, for the ladybug, then yes, I do use external light, or I do use flashlight to light up the, so here you see there is a little purple flower, so that's light up to kind of pop in the water drop.
Cool.
I'm not.
If we get to the other tips for the ladybug photo, I'm excited. I think there's another one there.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
And yes, it's.
Well, there we
There
go.
we are.
Perfect. And
So you're saying the background is just an iPad? That's what that is?
The first photo, that was just an iPad. Yes.
Oh, okay. That is a smart idea.
Because, I was thinking, well, I really want something a little different in my background. I've done flowers a lot. And I think for this one, I didn't want to have a yellow flower or a red flower with a red flower. That's all I had at the time. So that's why I thought, hey, let's try to use my iPad and see what I can get. So all you need is just go outside, get a blade of grass, get your iPad, and here you go. You can already do refraction.
Wow. One of the question that's coming through, do you use extension tubes in your macro?
I've tried, and I just abandoned. I shipped them back. But I've seen some Olympus photographers who have amazing photos with their macro and have been so inventive. So they inspire me to maybe try it again. But I don't use any tubes. It's just really straight out of camera and lens. And I use the EM1 Mark III as my camera for macro. And for I need the working distance with any beetle that I'm going to photograph. So that's why I use the 60 millimeter macro. And having a good source of light. And I use a flash, and I have a diffuser. I'm really jealous of your diffuser. I might have to do one like yours. I made my own little, box.
That's fancier than mine. Mine is very, very basic. Yours is a lot fancier. But honestly, anything will do the trick, and a lot of people make their own and put their own flair on it and do it in a way that's tailored for their macro. So there's no right way to do a diffuser.
Yes. I love the fact that you can get away with DIY diffusers for this sort of thing so easily with any sorts of materials. I've literally origamied white printer paper around my flash before because I was in a pinch,
That's just a normal, hand towel.
Yes. That's amazing.
Oh, wow.
That's it. And it works pretty well.
Whoa.
I mean, I think.
One of your other tips on that page that I love, and I think is honestly just one of the most important things to remember when you're doing macro photography with a live subject, is that they're in charge. Don't try and produce it the way that you would a portrait with a person. Like, you are capturing them living their lives, and you're just an observer.
Exactly. And it's the most important, that poor little ladybug was so nice. So I named them. So this is Beatrice. I like to, be familiar with my subject. And they're just hanging out around, actually, my office where I teach. So I would teach my classes, have my meeting. And then I had so many ladybugs in my office that I started, thinking, hey, great, I'm going to do those photo shoot with them. And they've been pretty nice. But sometimes, it just doesn't work. You need to set up, do all your setting and then bring the ladybugs. But if the ladybugs decide that it's not worth it and it wants to go back to the window and has other things to deal with, just let it go. It's, there is nothing you can do about it. It's part of the game.
it's kind of an easy come, easy go sort of thing with macro, and the same way it is with wildlife or birding. It's, you know, you're lucky to be able to witness these things, and if not, then it wasn't meant to be.
Exactly. And that's part of the game. You never know what you are going to get. You have those idea of, okay, I'm doing a refraction. Now I want to try to bring in a live subject and see what it does. And sometimes they surprise you. Sometimes they decide that the angle is not going to work for them. And that's, you know, just it. But what I like is, you know, with the camera and for refraction, I do set up everything on a small tripod, but when I do the ladybug, for example, I do not. It's handheld. It's not photo stacked because the ladybugs are just so they're crazy. So I've never been able to have one stand still for even a few seconds.
They're never flighty subjects.
Yeah, I've had the worst time trying to photograph ladybugs. They just make me angry. I'm like, I'm gonna go back to the bees. They like me. But I'll use the 300 millimeter with the 1.4 teleconverter, and like I have like a lavender bed out front, and I'll just sit there and wait with it on my knees, and I'm like, I'm gonna get you, bees. But I don't bother them. They just kind of come to me. They do their own thing.
Yes.
But I can't get ladybugs, so I'm very impressed with this because mine will fly away as soon as I get near them. They're like, bye.
I'm scrolling through the comments. I love one that says a Kleenex can be used in a pinch if you're looking to do some diffusing. And then there's one from a few minutes ago asking if you can use an EM10 Mark II to get those types of macro shots. I know you said that the 45 f1.8 and the 14 to 42, you know, having a dedicated macro lens is always good. Since I'm not in the comments replying to people tonight, I'll say I'll do this after we stop being live, but I will send you a link to an article on the Learn Center that Michaela actually wrote that gives you focusing distance for all sorts of lenses that aren't macro lenses specifically, and how you can use them for close-up photography. And I have to say, I see amazing macro photography every day on Instagram from users who are using the EM10 Mark II and the EM10 Mark III. So you definitely have tools to get into macro with the camera that you have.
And I will say, I noticed the 14 to 42. I'm pretty sure that
that's part of your article.
PO2, the macro converter on our site or your local camera dealer, wherever you like to shop, there's a macro converter for that lens, which can work. It'd be a little bit less expensive of a way if you're kind of jumping into macro and you're not really ready to commit to either the 30 or the 60 macro.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hate to shoo you out of the way, Emily, because that was amazing and I really loved your tips. But I know we've got one more guest, and I know we're running a little late tonight. So everyone that's still on here, all of you guys out there in Facebook and YouTube land, thank you for hanging out with us still. Yeah. And thank you to Emily for sharing her awesome tips on how to make these amazing close focus photography shots. It was very impressive.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'll check the comments. If you have questions, I'll be there and I'll answer some of them. So don't hesitate. Thank you so much. And I'm going to tune up for the next presenter. I'm super excited.
Yes.
Bye, Emily.
So we're going to bring in Robin next. We're so excited. She is up in Canada and takes some really unique landscape photos around her town. I love it. Hi,
everyone. Thanks so much for having me.
How's it going? How's Canada? How's your weather?
It's been amazing. Like, we've probably been in spring for like, it honestly feels like we've been in spring for like a month, because it's just been like blue skies. It's been so warm, and like the weather's been awesome. So I'm loving it.
That's awesome.
That
is so awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to see. Yeah, there we go. That's the slide I was looking for. Can you talk to us a little bit? I mean, I know you're in Canada, which is awesome, but tell us a little bit about, you know, kind of where you are and what you like to shoot and what you're up to.
Yeah, so I'm located in the Okanagan Valley of BC, so it's kind of the southern end of BC. So I'm quite a bit of ways from the coast. I know some people think I'm a little bit closer to the coast. I'm actually closer to the Rockies. But I mostly like to get outdoors and shoot like landscapes and places, gearing more towards like intimate landscape photography. But yeah, so that's just, but I also like experimenting with other things, which some people might see a lot on like my Instagram and YouTube, that I can't like sit still very long, and that I'm doing like stop motion and time lapses. And then the next day I'm out photographing birds, and like I'm just kind of all over the place sometimes.
Yeah, and you have on our Learn Center, actually, you did a recent tutorial on how to use the stop motion with the cupcakes, right?
Yeah. So like I love
cute.
doing stop motion was great in the winter time, because I just found the end of December, January, the weather here was really like dull and gray, and I just wasn't inspired whatsoever to get outside. So the stop motion was awesome to like do things like more inside the house and like play around with that. So stop motion was awesome for that.
So when you did the stop motion, were you doing individual photos and then stitching them together, or were you using the time lapse feature in the cameras?
So I was manually stitching them together, and I tend to like to do that with the stop motion and time lapses, just because I like to have control afterwards of the speed, because every clip, it just depends. I might want like one sequence to be faster than another sequence. So I just tend to like to have manual control over all of that. But I've never tried it with the time lapse feature in the camera. So like I might have to do that.
It might make it easier, or it might make it way harder for the type of thing you were doing. I was just curious to see how you did it.
Yeah, no, it does take longer to do all of that manually, like in computer, because you have to like export everything. And I think my laptop's getting a little old and a little like full, because it's taking a lot longer to do everything. And I mean, it is getting old, so. But yeah, it does take a longer, but yeah, I just like having the manual control over everything, so.
Well, I'm really excited to see what you've been shooting outdoors recently. Oh, I love this.
Yeah,
This is so cool.
like I said, I really like doing like, I like getting outdoors and photographing more landscapes and places, but I do gravitate more towards like intimate landscape photography. So this one was of Canada Place in Vancouver. And if we go to the next slide, I do share that I actually captured this one with my phone. So the reflection that you see at the bottom is using my phone to create the reflection. And this was a technique that I picked up early on from Lisa over at the Wandering Lens. And so basically I have my camera here because it's kind of easier to show, but you basically just hold your phone up to your camera, and you just have to fiddle with the angle to get like the reflection that you're looking for. And I do find actually I have a pop socket on my phone, and it just helps hold the phone in place longer, because I do shoot it handheld. So like you've got the camera in one hand, you've got your phone in the other, and you just have to fiddle with the angle and your distance. So I was actually across the harbor for this one, because I find your distance, and then if your subject is either horizontal or vertical, it changes. So I've always I prefer to do this with horizontal objects, just because it's a lot easier with the phone and the size of the phone, because the phone's not very large. But like vertical ones always seem to be a lot tougher, just because, again, the size of your phone. But when you're doing this, a key thing here is blending that phone line. So I have a bit of a lip on my phone, so I have to make sure your screen is dark. This happens to me all the time, where I'll be taking photos and I won't realize that my phone is actually lit with like my screen. So just make sure your phone's dark, but like blending that phone line, so using a wide aperture helps with that. And then I actually find that if you zoom in a little bit on your camera, it just helps blend that line further, so it doesn't really look like you're using a phone to create the reflection.
It's so smart. It's such a smart thing. Someone's asking if you could show it again, how you do it.
Yeah, so I have my pop socket. Okay, so you basically just like hold it up like that. Let's see, where's the camera? So like you hold it up like that, and you just have to fiddle with the angle to make sure you get like the reflection that you want. So it's really all it is just holding your phone up to your camera like that, and just play with the angle of it. And yeah, that's all it is. It's super simple, and I love doing it when sometimes there's like, if I'm out by the water or anything like that, you have maybe parts of the ground that isn't like super appealing. You know, you've got a duck that's got a bunch of stuff on it or anything like that. So using this kind of just helps to kind of get rid of that distraction bit there. But yeah, it's a super easy, super simple technique that I love doing.
I find that a lot of the times the techniques that create the most interesting visual effects tend to be these really simple things using something that you might not think would be related to photography at all. And when you just pair it, it creates something really unique and special.
Yeah. And I mean, everyone has, well, pretty much now these days, everyone has a phone. So it's just super easy to always have on hand, and you just use it when, yeah, I like using it for more horizontal subjects, but super simple and easy to do.
Awesome. What's your next shot? I don't remember. Oh yes, I love this one.
Oh, I love this one. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So this one here, it was part of, I like working in series. I don't know why, but I was doing a series called Characteristics of Kelowna, and I wanted to feature like kind of what makes Kelowna Kelowna. And so the Paramount Theater, just a little quick backstory here, is we used to have a really old theater here called the Paramount, but it got torn down a couple of years ago, and it was built, I think, in 1949. And they kept the sign because it is this kind of iconic landmark figure for like our downtown area. So now that you can kind of see, there's like a bunch of restaurants that are now where the Paramount Theater used to be. So as part of the series, I wanted to capture the Paramount sign, but I wanted to like add a little bit extra to it. So what I did is, again, this is super simple. I handheld shot this. So I stood at the corner of downtown, and I basically just slowed my shutter speed down so it would create this like light trail in front of the camera. So I just had to wait for the perfect vehicle to drive by, and I ended up lucking out because this vehicle that had driven by, he had his regular set of headlights, but he also had these lights at the top of his truck, which is a very common, I feel, here. I mean, most people just drive like regular cars. But this vehicle just ended up having 2 different levels of lights. And so I was able to capture this like multi-level layer of lights. So I ended up lucking out with this specific vehicle that drove by. But that's all I did is I slowed my shutter speed down. I stood at the corner and I just waited for the perfect car to drive by.
That's really impressive because you're over a second long, handheld. I guess that just, I mean, showing how, sharp and tight the sign is and the stuff in the background is just a testament to how awesome in-body image stabilization is.
Right? Yes.
That's so awesome.
And like this was like a little bit after sunset, I think it was. And yeah, with the in-body stabilization, I think I can get down to maybe, it just depends. I might be able to get down to 2 seconds without needing a tripod before I can like start, I start shaking, but breathing,
Yeah.
Taking
or apparently too much coffee.
As well. Sometimes I'll even hold my breath before I even take the photo to like really try to calm myself down before I take it. But yeah, definitely. And then the last photo that I'll just quickly share too, how I got the shot. So this was part of my sort of chasing fall in Kelowna. Like I said, I work in series. I don't know why, but I was basically chasing fall here and all of the fall foliage that we were getting. And I knew as soon as we were entering into autumn that I wanted to get these like falling leaf shots. So I particularly just liked sort of the comparison of like, we were at the beach, it's a beach rental hut, but we're no longer into summer, we're like going into autumn. So for this one, I actually had a bucket that I was like collecting all of the leaves in. So I didn't have to like constantly pick them up and then sprinkle again constantly because it took a number of shots. But what you do is it's pretty simple too. It takes a little bit more work than I would say the other two, and that you have to sprinkle the leaves in front of the frame. And I was using just a fast shutter speed, and I was using sequential high to do this. And so I was sprinkling the leaves in front of the frame in order to get this gradual leaf fall. But I do find depending on the direction of the wind. So on this day, there was a direction going to the lake. And so I just compensated by sprinkling them a little bit more to the left. And then I also find sprinkling the leaves instead of just dumping them, because if you dump them, it does tend to like clump together a little bit more. And if you don't have that breeze, it's just gonna like fall flat. But yeah, you can use sequential high like I did, or you can try using Pro Capture. On this day, I was just finding sequential high worked for me. But yeah, that's just basically how I got that shot there.
It's good to have options in terms of, shooting sequential high or Pro Capture, that that you do have a backup if what you're feeling you're doing just isn't working for you on that day. And I think that this photo really does kind of encapsulate that whole end of summer feeling, because you see the beach hut, and then the yellow that's just so kind of like emblematic of autumn up in BC. I think that it really tells the story that you wanted it to tell.
Yeah, and like you can even tell with the leaves in the back, like this was probably early October, maybe end of September. I can't remember what month it was in, because the leaves haven't fully changed yet. So they were like half yellow, half green still. So they hadn't fully turned autumn yet. So yeah, I just really like the sort of the signaling of the end of the season. It's kind of hard to do it right now with winter and spring. Mm-hmm. Had a really mild winter here. Like, other than the weather's been dull and gray, we've had some snow, but it doesn't oftentimes stick around here. So it's kind of hard to signal, I guess, the end of winter and like beginning of spring, but.
Love that. I think it's cool to kind of see, I know you talk about doing series, and I definitely see it on your Instagram or on your YouTube, where you talk about just kind of showing the town you grew up in and encouraging people to look at their own backyard in a different way and imagine that they're seeing it for the first time. I think that that's a really good way to be as a photographer, especially, right now, because we're not traveling. We are #home with Olympus, we're going to our local park, and we're going to just kind of see what's around us. And it is good to remember to look at where you live with new eyes, because that's how you're going to get the most interesting shots. And I think that that's good that you've been doing that.
Yes. And it did help that I recently moved back to Kelowna. So like I had spent 2 years in northern Alberta. So it was a lot colder up there, a lot flatter up there. And so being able to spending the last couple of years up there and then moving back to the Okanagan, I moved back here in July of last year. So that kind of move actually did really help me kind of like fall back in love with Kelowna, because before I left for northern Alberta, I was kind of like done with Kelowna. I'm like, I want something new. I want to like move out of the city, like, experience something different. But during that time away and coming back, like I've actually like refallen in love with Kelowna. And now I've probably explored and done more within my hometown in the last like less than a year that I've been back than in like the 20 plus years that I was living here before.
I love that.
It's an inspiration story.
Yeah. I also just really love this comment I just saw come in. It's good for us to see your comments and that you're enjoying being introduced to new Olympus photographers. I think that it's been so refreshing and inspiring to talk with all of you ladies tonight and just kind of see what you're doing and getting these easy tips. Like, I feel like I have a takeaway from everyone where I'm like, I need to try this tomorrow or this weekend.
For sure. At least like one solid tip from everything. I'm like, ooh, I didn't even think about that. And then my gears start turning. I'm like, well, what else could I use that tip for? I bet you, I could try this. It's just so nice to be inspired again, when we're all trying to come up with new things to shoot right now, right?
Yeah. And I like have a running notes app right now as I've been listening in on this, or like things that I want to try and like settings even that they use. And I'm like, I can't do Snowflake macro right now because I'm in spring, but next year.
Yes.
Looking forward to that.
I love it.
Well, I think that we have to say goodnight. So, Robin, we will see you off. And I just, again, want to thank you also for and being a part of this tonight and sharing your tips with us. And we look forward to speaking with you again in the future and everyone again in the future. And I hope you have a great night. And thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. When we end, we'll be sharing some links to some of the articles that Robin and also Emily and Natalie have written for the Learn Center. And hopefully there's some more info in there that will inspire you to get out and start shooting. And we had a lot of fun tonight. I want to thank Michela. It was strange and surreal being on this side of the camera for the first time, but I hope this is something that, you know, we can do a lot more, just being able to get people who are doing something that's inspiring that maybe you haven't seen, and just, you know, people that we're seeing out there shooting and sharing on social and have something to offer to the big, awesome Olympus community.
That's right. This was
Sorry,
our
my
first
dog
time.
I feel like there are weird noises coming through.
So this is our first time trying something like this with our Home with Olympus. And we are definitely looking forward to having a chance to do this again in the future. So if you have a tip or a thought or something that you do that you feel is a really cool thing, and that you'd like to share and teach the world, let us know in the comments and reach out. We would love to start kind of planning ahead for the next time we get a showcase for new Olympus community members. It's really nice to just see more people from our community and share with everyone. And I just appreciate everyone who joined us tonight. And again, I know I've said this a million times, but I am very, very excited for Astro April. So I hope that Thursday, April 8th and Thursday, April 22nd, 5 p.m. Eastern, you will join us. I've got Frank Smith and Peter Baumgarten. They are both going to be sharing some amazing astro and night sky photography tips, as well as editing, some a little bit more advanced deep dive stuff, you know. It is going to be truly awesome, and I hope you guys will join us then. And thank you for spending Thursday night at home with Olympus. Thank you, Amanda, for joining us too. It was so great to have you.
Thank you. And we hope that we see you again really soon. I think we'll say goodbye and look forward to seeing your pictures. You know, send them to us. Send us messages, tag us, hashtag #BreakFreeWithOlympus or hashtag #HomeWithOlympus on Instagram or Twitter. And I look forward to seeing what you shoot.
Have a great night, everyone.